We are live.
Hello and welcome to Founder Hacks, our podcast where we share something we've seen, something we've read, and something we've learned that's been a source of inspiration or edification to the founders that we work with. This week, our Founder Hacks are on the theme of process. Every business is based on brilliant processes, enabling you to get your jobs done efficiently, to budget and on time. So a little bit nerdy this week, but we thought this would be of great interest to our listeners. So let me start by saying a huge welcome to Mr. Antony Enright.
Hi Ben, hi Alex.
And of course, an equally massive welcome to Mr. Alex Moore.
Hello, with some background sound effects this week of clattering pots and pans. Just to keep it, maybe add some excitement, some drama. What do you think?
Add some excitement. Well, as a successable restaurateur, Alex, I mean, this just adds to the ambience, surely.
Yes.
It's better than the hammering that we had. But yeah, the dulcet sounds of cooking is always a good thing. So I'm sure our listeners will forgive us. Okay. So let's kick off. And who would like to kick off this week?
Well, I would like to go first this week, if that's all right, with our scene. And the scene this week on the theme of process is about an organisation that we've seen has a particular principle about certain ways of working. And what they do is, if they notice that a job takes any more than 2 or 3 hours a week, they ask a really simple question, right? How do we automate it? So ultimately what they do is they set a challenge to say, well, if it's a task that takes 2 or 3 hours a week, most weeks, then why don't we spend 8 hours working out how to automate it? And what they're seeing is that there aren't just small marginal improvements. We're talking huge time saving. And of course, there are other benefits as well at times, but really the major one is they're getting processes that are taking 2 or 3 hours every week down to 4 or 5 minutes. So what it means is that the individuals within the team are able to really focus on their other tasks and achieving their objectives rather than doing the same tasks week in, week out. And they've been doing this for some time. So what they've also seen is that this is now part of their culture. So everybody within their organization is now tasked with, okay, is that something we can now automate? And actually give them permission, give them the time to go away and automate. And I just think it's fascinating, especially for, at times I think I'm right up to speed with what we need to do next and where we go next. And then sometimes I think with tech, I'm a real dinosaur. And for me, my sort of background is always one of, no, just get your hands dirty. Certainly from my upbringing, get your hands dirty and get the job done, do the hard yards. Whereas actually when you see a team, it's so satisfying to see a team going, we don't have to do that laborious task anymore. It's now automated. And the other impacts of having, the data and the other impacts of automating is just amazing to see the progress a business can make because of that. So fascinating, and one I'm going to be talking to a lot more people about. And Ben, what were your thoughts in learning this and seeing this?
I think it's fascinating, isn't it? The nature of work has changed, right? Certainly from the time when I started my career. We have so many more answers than we used to. If there was a complicated process, the answer we used to have is, oh, right, well, we're going to throw people at it. We're going to throw time at it. We now have the option to throw technology at it. And, I know we don't like to sort of advise or judge in Founder Hacks. It's all about sharing our experience. But, if I were to stretch those principles, I'd say any business that is not leveraging technology to unleash that automation, to deliver those exponential gains, I can't see how you can compete anymore, because your competitors are going to be doing it. And genuinely, if there is any job that is taking you, that length of time, I would wager that in the vast majority of cases, there is a way not just to make a fractional improvement, but to take it to minutes or seconds. And and equally, I think the other side to this is how empowering it is for your staff and your team, because giving them that ability to go and learn, to go and discover, to go and find out what tool we can use to do this an order of magnitude better is incredible. And equally, that's then giving them skills they can carry into the rest of their careers. So I think done in the right way, it becomes an incredibly empowering part of a business culture, and also gets people excited about process, right? Because often we start talking about process and people glaze over and go, oh no, process, oh how dull. Well, it doesn't have to be, it can be super exciting when you realize that, that really boring job that you're doing at the moment, well, let's find a way to take that job away so you can spend more time doing things that really add value for the business, doing things that move the business forwards and improve it, not just maintenance.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Which I think is huge. But I should bring in Alex as well, because I think he's a great fan of a good process. You love a good process, don't you, Alex?
I do. Yeah, and I like when we were doing our editorial this week, I thought this was an excellent example, because it's a business that all three of us are connected to. And yeah, to me, this whole idea of creative destruction, I think it was Schumpeter, the economist, and this whole idea of creative destruction by making yourself obsolete and rethinking things and doing things, you're destroying one thing, but you're creating something else. And I think this is where Silicon Valley was, the praises of Silicon Valley were being sung a few years ago, talking about the ability for all these businesses to make themselves obsolete. And I guess you take it from a macro level where, okay, the whole team can work together to see, okay, how do we make our own business obsolete by automating it to move on? And then you could drill down and take it to the micro level of where you are each day. How can I make my own role obsolete so that I can free myself up to do this? And I think the really innovative companies are always trying to do that. They're always trying, okay, we're doing well at the moment, it's working well, but how do we improve our processes in order to make ourselves obsolete to then move on and take the business to the next level? So yeah, this whole idea of creative destruction and process, love it, gentlemen.
And what would you both say? Because when I bring this up with members of family who are slightly older and people that think in a slightly different way, and they go, but what you're doing is you're replacing people. So actually, you're taking jobs away. What would your response be if you've ever heard that, or when you talk about automating and putting systems in place?
I would challenge it, absolutely. I would challenge it, because you just say that that's what we want people to do, I think, is to undervalue what people are capable of. To make the assumption that all people are capable of is running a repetitive process. I don't think I've ever met anyone who that's the limit of their capability. And I think actually what this does is unlocks the potential of people, because the thing that you still need people to do is to make those value judgments, to set the strategy to decide, well, actually, what are we doing with this process? How are we using it? These are much more interesting and engaging questions. And actually, in every business where I've seen this happen, what happens is everybody steps up. It actually, in any business that's of any merit, there's never a shortage of other things to then focus on, further improvements to be made, more extension of what happens. And actually, it is a bit of a myth. There's been a number of writers, and I have to look them up to remember who they are, who, the sort of the Luddite fear that when we will reach this point of automation where humans are redundant. Well, guess what? It's never happened. Every time you bring something new to the table in terms of an automation, there is still more work to be done. It's just different work. And actually, what we're doing by having this culture in a business is we're helping people live into that world where actually the value of humans is their capacity to learn and improve things, not just to do. And I think that's positive for the future.
Brilliant. I love that answer. Absolutely love that answer. Alex, can you beat that answer?
Hard, difficult. But I would say this, that I'm a big fan of Yuval Noah Harari, and he said in his view, this century is the century where human beings will not be able to keep up with technology anymore. So this creative destruction that is so inherent inside tech companies we're going to find it might run out eventually. But for me, as long as the business is innovating and trying to recreate itself, and all the people inside it are trying to do it at the same pace, the new roles should be created at the same time as the business grows. But if the business is staying put and everyone's trying to make their own roles redundant inside it, then where do they go? But if the business is looking forward, then I feel there is that space.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. I think that's one that we could debate a lot longer, but I think that's some really good thoughts there. And on that note, Alex, we're going to move on to your red.
Yeah, it's again on the theme of process this week. It's an article from Forbes which we will share about how executives should spend their time, and it references a favourite thing of mine that I bore you guys about over many years, is Eisenhower's Matrix, the former president of the US. He was famous for his matrix that he put together and his time management system, which to this day seems to me to be the basis of a lot of time management systems. So I'll try and describe it very briefly, but it's a matrix, four quadrants. In the top left quadrant, you have urgent and important. Top right quadrant, urgent, not important. Bottom left quadrant, not important, urgent. And then bottom right quadrant, not urgent, not important. So the idea was that he would process every piece of information and try and figure out which quadrant it was in, and try and focus on quadrant 2, important but not urgent. And he felt that, and this logic is hard to argue with, he felt that was the way that you could be the most productive within an organization or a government or something, running something your own time. And I just really absorbed this. I went on a time management course about 20 odd years ago in Hong Kong, and I just stuck onto this. And I just absolutely, to this day, try and process think about Eisenhower. I think about it every day, and I think about all the things that they're doing, and I try and manage my time to try and delegate and organize things so I can stay in that quadrant of important but not urgent. I don't like the mental clutter of doing everything now. So yeah, although this was written a very long time ago, the Matrix, the article talks about it, and I think it's still probably more relevant than it was when he came up with it. So
yeah, and I'm nodding away here because I'm going, I think it's more important today than it's ever been. We talk on occasion, don't we, on Founder Hacks about the way in which people have had to alter their ways of working during lockdown and working virtually. And certainly the people that I work with, I constantly hear how busy people are, how long the hours they are that they work. And I just ask them the question, is it important? Is it urgent? And differentiating between the two of them is quite a penny drop moment for a lot of people, going, the difference between proactively understanding exactly what I need to achieve, exactly what needs to be done, how I break that down and how I impact that this week or that day, versus how am I reacting to the things that are going on around me. And the more they can concentrate on the important areas of achieving their objectives that day, that week, not only are they far more productive, but also they're just far happier as they go along their work, because they're just saying to people, is that important? And they keep asking the question, is it important? But it's really urgent. But is it important? Is it important? And I think you get that into the culture of the business, everybody starts thinking that way, and you have more proactive business versus reactive business.
It's one of the key success criteria. I think for successful people, they're very, very good at doing that. And I think if there is a skill you have to have, I mean, that's probably one of the best ones to have or to focus on. So, Ben, what do you think?
Time management always fascinates me, and I think I've been lucky enough. I spent some time in a former life, sort of helping contribute to put together courses for sort of very senior people in big organizations thinking about time management. And I still remember one of the things I often, particularly working with perhaps people at earlier stages in their career, and you sort of start talking about time management, they're going, don't talk to me about that, I can write a list. And you're going, no, look, seriously, every CEO I know at the top of their career is obsessed with time management systems and processes to really accelerate their own performance and productivity. I must admit, I always struggle a bit with the Eisenhower Matrix because I find it a little difficult sometimes to use. But I do love, which is something else that you gave me, Alex Moore, something that fell out of it, which was these 4Ds. I think they were yours, the 4D system. So my understanding of this is, if ever a task comes up, or if ever a task is presented to you, you've got 4 and only 4 options. Do it now. Decide when you're going to do it, i.e. put it in your diary, delete it, so simply don't do it, or delegate it. And you must choose one of the 4 immediately you're presented with that task. Because if what a lot of people do is they don't choose one of those 4 and it just slips through the cracks, and they become perceived as disorganized. Whereas if you always choose one of those 4, then pretty much you're capturing everything. You're not like a colander just letting stuff all fall through. So I love that. And then the other process that I use is to make sure I have time in my diary explicitly to spend prioritizing. So looking at those things I've decided to do later, looking at them and going, actually, are they still the priority? Do they need to move around? And I try to put these times in my diary to do these things. I find it really useful because ultimately there are points where you go, okay, I'm going to decide when I'm going to do that, but actually it's going to be in 3 weeks' time because I'm full. I don't have that capacity. And that's, again, hugely important. I find that extension of the Eisenhower very useful. Antony?
Yeah, well, I'm going to... so we go Eisenhower Matrix, 4Ds, and I'm just going to raise you ever so slightly from the 4Ds to something that a good friend of all of ours, Andy Clayton, has come up with called SODA. So it's the same as the 4Ds, but it's just maybe a bit more of a modern take on it, which is stop, outsource, delegate, automate.
Oh, nice.
And I think it just comes back to our earlier piece about just maybe those other options, because it's the automation we've spoken about, but also the outsourcing. Who can you partner with, or who can you actually outsource those tasks to?
I love that. That's a level up, isn't it? That's a level up.
I think it's a next step up. Yeah.
The next step up. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Very good.
But I've seen it been used to such great effect because it just gets people thinking, not just about do it now, delegate, decide when, etc. It's about that next step of, okay, future action, as in we've already discussed the automation, but also the outsourcing and delegation. I think we all know that the most successful people are those that delegate really effectively and who teach their people to delegate effectively. So it all runs down really well. So the pressure doesn't sit at any one point. It's all equally spread because we're all delegating really effectively.
I think that's a great way of managing responsibility, isn't it? I think 4Ds are kind of tasks, but then when it comes to responsibilities, SODA definitely trumps.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So, Alex, how can you sum that up?
Well, is it SODA? Is it 4Ds? Is it the Eisenhower Matrix? Is it a combination of all of them? I guess for me, it's whatever works for you and how your brain works. And what I like about the 4Ds is that's how it just suits me for how my brain works. And I think, using all of these things and all these theories pushed by management consultants or inside books, to me, it's a little mix of combining several of them in order to get the solution that works for you, because not one size fits all. And I think that's what I'm going to take from our little conversation here, because we've got all got a little take on it, and you've got to put it together, and then it works for you and your brain, and to make you the most productive you are. But for me, it is the vital skill for a successful founder of a business to be good at. And if you're not good at it, I would say do whatever you can to become good at it, because that's how to scale a business, is it not, gentlemen?
So just to clarify that though, Alex, when you say get good at it, do you mean actually yourself, or actually using those things we've spoken about to bring those people in who are good at it?
Yeah, no, I would say, do whatever you have to do. Read a book, go on a course, lean on mates who are good at it, and find out. If you're not naturally good at it, then find out how to become good at it, because it's the key to a calmer, happier life for me, and a way to scale business. Without being good at this, how do you scale a business? By working harder? I don't think so. Most founders I know work bloody hard anyway. So yeah, process is king.
So the only thing I'd add to that from my own experience is that when you say just learn about it, get better at it, as soon as you can afford to pay somebody to do the things that you're not good at, do it, in my experience, because I didn't. It took me a long time to learn that lesson, and I think you were both there today. I learned that lesson in quite a harsh way. It opened up those things. Can I actually afford to bring somebody in or to do the things I'm not good at? And that was a real pivotal moment to unlocking growth for me.
Well, that might be a good point to move on to learned, which is, again, Ben, which you strangely gravitate towards the old learned.
I tend to. I fear I have this reputation. Whether it's found or not, I don't know. But this is a really simple one. And it just... I was reminded of it this past couple of weeks when we decided on process. And my very early career, as I think many people's early careers were, my first jobs were in hospitality and retail, right? So, working in shops, working in, in my case, bars, restaurants, that kind of thing. And I think it's a great place to start your career because there's some habits that you get into when you work in those sectors that I think, certainly for me, I recognise still echo today in how I approach my work. And the key one that I thought was relevant here was, every hospitality business and every retail business, they have an opening up process and a closing down process. So at the beginning of the day, you open up, and there's certain things you do in a certain order every day to get ready for your customers to come and join you. At the end of your shift, when your customers have all left, you then have a closing down process where you get everything ready for the next day, you clean up and you make sure everything's neat and tidy for the people who come in the next day. It might be you, might be someone else, to then open up. And what's great is, because everyone opens up and closes down in the same way, it doesn't matter who opens up the next day because everything's in the place where it should be and they can open up really smoothly. And I think it's a great lesson, and I try and apply it today in my work, even though I don't work in those sectors anymore. Sadly, I used to love working behind a bar. I'd love to do it again one day, but I don't get to do that anymore. I have a different sort of job, but I still think it's hugely relevant. I love to make sure my first sort of half an hour, 40 minutes of my day, I open up, and I have certain things I do in a certain order that opens up my work and reminds me of where I was and what I need to do. And at the end of every day, I try to close down. I do the same things in the same order, and so that I know that the next day I can do my opening up. It also really helps if I'm sick or if something goes wrong, because I kind of know everything's in its place the next morning when I wake up. And I think I'm naturally a really disorganized person. Perhaps that's why this is important to me, right? I have to. I'm sure there are some people out there who are good enough at being organized just naturally, who don't need to do this, and I envy them deeply. But I know I'm not that organized, so I have to have these disciplines and processes. So that was it, really. And I think the other thing we can do with these is they iterate. So I try to then, I have a daily open and close down, but I also have a weekly open and close down. I have things I do last thing on a Friday, things I do first thing on a Monday, that just give everything some structure and rhythms and make sure that I can sleep easy because I know nothing's falling through the gaps, or almost nothing, hopefully. But yeah, I just thought those little inspirations that come from different places are really useful. And I suspect you both have something to say, because I know you're both familiar with both those sectors from your early careers as well. Go on, Mr. Moore, what do you reckon?
Yeah, to me, I like process. And when you were talking about your checklist, your opening up checklist, and you're putting down, I like that. And I wonder, how many people do that in offices? I don't, have desk jobs. I don't know if people do. Whereas it's absolutely standard in retail and hospitality. But for me, the thing I wanted to pick up on is the through the process. There's a thing that we guys used to talk about when we were in EO together, that structure will set you free. And the whole idea of process and structure, it frees up the mind to focus on bigger and more sort of important strategic decisions you need to make inside a business. And I think that's what I love about it. You mentioned sleeping better. I can sleep better because, for me, a little trick I have at the end of my day, my closing down day, and I mentioned this to you two guys before, is I make sure I do my to-do list for the next day. When I finish, my day. That's my closing structure. So that when I go to sleep, I don't have to, what's those things I've got to do? Because I've written them all down when I'm in work mode. So that when I wake up the next day, I know when my meetings are, when and the things I've got to get done that day. So to me, it's the quality of thinking and quality of life that's so important. That's why I loved when you shared this with us during the editorial, because I love it. And I like it's the checklist at the beginning of the day, and the checklist at the end of the day is very important for me. Antony, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, as you were sort of talking there, I've been writing down a couple of things, and then Ben said one thing, you said another, and I've got several things. I don't know where to go, but what I'll start with is the kind of quality of life, right? Because ultimately, I think some years ago, I don't think it mattered whether you were in retail or when you worked in an office. When we were sort of using paper to do our job, you left. You might have taken a file home with you, or you might have read up something, but it was just far easier to differentiate between work life and home life. And what that does is it enables you to have that balance that a lot of us are looking for. But what it also enables you to do is be able to switch off from work, put your energy and efforts into other things, and then you're able to go back with an energy and a freshness to that work, in my view. And also when you're doing other things, there'll be certain ideas, and we spoke last time about idleness, and the beauty of idleness, where you start to think about those areas where you've got roadblocks or issues. But with the invention of tech, it makes it very hard now, doesn't it, when you work in a sort of office environment where you're either on messengers or you're on email or whatever it may be, to switch off. So that quality of life is much harder. And I love the analogy of the restaurant. You maybe had a night out in town, and then you're hungry and you're going to look for somewhere, and you don't keep knocking on the doors, do you? You just look in the restaurant window and see whether the chairs are up on the table. And it's a clear sign that they're shut, right? So they're shut. In our working worlds today, when do people know that you're shut? When do they know that you're actually closed? So it does mean that we're getting into all these new habits without realizing it, that we can keep going and keep going. And as soon as you reply to an email, it's telling people that you're open, that you're still open. So for me, it's if you're looking for that balance, you've got to set those parameters. In my view, you've got to be looking at what parameters can I set so people know when I'm open and when people know when I'm closed. So I've got one new person that I'm working with on a particular project, and she loves emails. We have our check-ins, but there's a lot to go through, so I'm empathetic toward that. But at the end of each day, when I'm finished, I send her an email and say, you will not get another reply from me today. I'm closed. So that I can just make
my chairs are on the desk.
My chairs are on the table.
I'm shut now. Done.
That's excellent.
Antony Enright is closed for business.
I think it's important. Otherwise, where do you stop? Today's world, like most of us, I'm at home. My journey from home to work is 60 seconds, not even that. And it's so easy to get them all crossed over, and I think productivity then becomes a huge issue. So.
Very good, very good. Well, on that note, gentlemen, I fear we are at time. I will do my best to summarise, as I am wont to do. So, if it takes 4 hours a week, can you spend 8 hours learning how to do it in 5 minutes? Can that attitude be part of your culture, so every person in your business can be empowered to empower your business and release those exponential gains in productivity? Clearly, the three of us are all massive to-do list and prioritization nerds. So are you? Whether it's the Eisenhower Matrix, the 4Ds, or soda, can you leverage these processes that are out there to prioritize and remain productive? Finally, we all know that structure sets us free. So how do you open and close your business and your work to make sure that you are both resilient but also sustainable? And ultimately, can that little bit of structure and regularity in your process give you a good night's sleep? So I think that's some great learning. What a wonderful tour of the world of process. As ever, we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear your founder hacks around process. So if there's anything we've said that resonates, anything you want to challenge, or any founder hacks you'd like to bring to the table, do let us know by dropping an email to hello@atomics.co.uk. It remains to say, as ever, a massive and enormous thank you to Mr. Antony Enright.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
And an equally fulsome thanks to Mr. Alex Moore.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for teaching me several things today. And thanks for listening.
I learned something too.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Really cool. Really cool. Do not forget as well, dear listeners, that Founder Hacks is not just a podcast. It is also a blog and a newsletter. You can sign up at atomics.co.uk/founderhacks. Until next time, I've been Ben Thomas. This has been Founder Hacks. And thank you very much indeed for listening.